it's Jeff here from discoverdouble-bass.com, where you can go to learn all about the double bass with our courses, our lessons and our interviews. And today I have an interview with a giant of the European double bass scene, somebody who's known as a chamber musician, as a soloist, and also as an orchestral bass player. He's the principal bassist of the Swedish Radio Symphony Orchestra, the Mahler Chamber Orchestra, and he's also a member of the Chamber Orchestra of Europe. And beyond classical music, he is a co-founder of the Stockholm Syndrome Ensemble and also a member of Orby, who fuse rock and metal influences with classical music. As an experienced educator, he's taught at the Conservatory in Amsterdam, as well as his own bass class in the Robert Schumann School of Music in Dusseldorf. And he also gives master classes around the world, including one tomorrow at the Royal College of Music in London. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Rick Stotijn. Welcome. So it's great to have you here today.
Cheers. Yeah, really nice.
Well, there's so much to talk about here. I'm struggling to actually take in all of the stuff that you do. I mean, what would you say that you spend most of your time doing, Rick, with the bass? How would you describe your career if you met somebody for the first time?
It's difficult to say. I mean, I should have 8 lives probably for the things I'm doing. I am actually reducing things. But a big part is actually teaching my class in Dusseldorf, which is, it is like a family for me. So I have quite a big class, 12 students now, and yeah, it's a real part of my daily life. Not only when I'm not teaching, they stalk me also when I'm abroad or wherever. So yeah, I think teaching. I mean, of course, the last 2 years, we all know, yeah, the name we shouldn't mention,
yeah,
the one we shouldn't mention, what we've been busy with, but it also gave me a lot of opportunity to, to rest, first of all, make new plans, organize a lot of things. The chamber music group you were just talking about, making new programs, planning new recordings, doing recordings, actual recordings, which was luckily still possible. So it's hard to say, but I think teaching chamber music orchestra, solo, in that order. Yeah.
One of the things that really fascinated me when I was researching your story is that your father, Peter Stotijn, is a double bass player and a professional double bass player. And I was wondering what your first memory of the double bass was. Do you have a specific memory of where you can recall first learning about the instrument, or was it just always there in your childhood?
No, I actually really wanted to play horn.
Oh, wow.
Horn was my first instrument, so I started with recorder. And then I had a big accident. I was kicked in my face by a horse. I was not standing behind, he just turned around very fast, and he probably noticed that I was scared. So he literally took out all my front and under tooth. So it's any wind instrument was kind of over. So I was pushed into the direction of this big monster. And of course I heard it at home. I heard the rumbling of my father practicing. And already as a small boy, I used to crawl inside and get the duster. And then while my father was practicing, I would just sit there and dust his bass off. And I remember he would always tell me, like, I wish you could stay small, because I was growing quite a bit. But then at the same time, I was big enough also to start the double bass. And so he got me a small bass.
Always playing,
yeah.
Even as it. So I mean, what kind of age had you reached a decent technical facility on the instrument? When did you remember your first concerts?
I'm still learning. I hope that age will never come. But I think I was about 9-10 years old that I really started, and then when I was 11 or something, I went to Utrecht to a special class for young kids. There was a student of my father, actually, former student of my father, also teaching. So I started with him. I mean, of course, my father was always like looking over the shoulders, which wasn't easy for the teachers either.
But that.
Yeah. So And in the end, I ended up studying with him, and for my master's, I went to Bojo in Freiburg.
Wow, so you did your undergraduate degree with your father. That must have been an intense experience.
It was quite intense, yeah. I can't recommend it to teach your own or to have lessons from your own father or mother. It's too close, and I think now we actually can even see that. Back then I wanted to have my father, and I think he wanted to see a very serious student, and I wanted something to go into lesson and you know, have a hug or whatsoever. But he was, in that sense, he was quite professional in that. He was scared that other students might think that I get a better treatment. So sometimes the opposite happened. So for him it must have been awful as well. But now, now we're closer than ever. So it's great.
Do you get to play his basses? That's the thing. You know?
I used to, no, I don't have any of them anymore. I used to have 2 basses of my father,
Nice. Yeah, there's a great picture on your website, which we'll maybe put on screen actually, of you and your father together, and it's a really beautiful picture of the two of you, but also he has a very nice bass in his hand. And I was thinking that would be...
It might have been my bass, but
I
don't know, I can't remember which bass that was, so yeah.
And then moving forward, one of your teachers is a good friend of Discover Double Bass and a hero to many in the bass world, Bozo Parajic. And can you talk about your experience of studying with him? Was it in Freiburg?
Yeah, it was. Well, the cool thing was actually he was playing next to my father. He was co-principal in The Hague, in the Hague Philharmonic, or in Dutch, the Residentieorchestra. And my father was principal, and they spent a lot of. It was his first orchestral job for Bozo. So I used to go to concerts, and already as a little boy, Bozo would just, you know, spread his arms and Richtje, he would say, and I would run to him, and he would, you know, throw me in the air.
Does that ever happen now?
No, I did ask him, like, why didn't you do that again? I always, then also, when I heard him playing, and I had a wish to learn from him, and yeah.
I mean, was he the solo voice that kind of sparked that, or was there somebody else in your world at that time?
I mean, there were many. Joel Carrington, he came also to do a masterclass in Dusseldorf, which was really, really great. And we were teaching together also on a course, Michelstein, together. And I had to admit that I used to wake up with his Schumann Adagio Allegro. So I have many, Joel, Rinat, Bozo, and also when I was studying Edgar Meyer, of course. Giants, basically. They all had something, so I can't say that I had one person.
Did you ever try tuning in fifths with Joel?
No.
You know?
No. That's a no-go for me.
Yeah, me too. He just sounds so incredible.
Yeah, he sounds amazing. Yeah.
But what about the German bow then? Because I believe you started out on French bow, and then what was the impetus to kind of transition across? I see you're playing German bow now. Is this the main squeeze, or were you switching between the two? How did that work?
No, I used to start actually switching around the whole time in the beginning. The good thing, actually, what I now also try when students come trying to switch, I try to see why do you want to switch? What's your reason? Because you should be able to sound good with both.
What are the typical reasons that people say that they want to switch from French to German bow?
I think the main reason is that they think they can get a bigger sound. It's more easy to have a bigger sound with German bow, which physically might be true, but well, when I started with Bozo, I just started with open strings and actually starting to fix my French bow hold. I was leaning way too much on this side, so I was literally blocking my wrist as well. And now, if you use, when I get the French bow again, I have much more this kind of hanging into the stick, which is actually very similar with the German bow, the feeling of weight. And having solved that first with my German bow, with my French bow, was then much more easy to pick up the German bow. I think if you switch because you can't get a good sound or you have problems with French bow or German bow, you will have the same problems. So
Yeah.
it's I guess you need to solve that first, and then I mean now I feel actually while I play German bow, whenever I get and play the French bow, then I feel much better than before. And of course I've been looking as well. I've been teaching together with Olivier Thierry, which is a fantastic French bow player. And he does know how to get a monstrous sound out of the bass. So spying, checking, and adjusting.
Yeah, learning from him. And do you find that, say we have somebody watching who's perhaps more of a beginner student and they're thinking about starting with one or the other, do you have a preference, or is it just what your teacher plays?
Well, in Germany, in Dusseldorf, where I teach, I mean, it's German school, so in the end, you will have to switch. But as I said before, I think it will make, even though in the end the student might go back to French bow, which not always often happens, it will really help with the French bow as well. So it's in any way, I think it's a good thing to discover both. And sometimes I'm not, also as a teacher, I'm not going to say this is the best bow hold, this is like this, and this is should be like this. It's so personal how one is built. So I first want to go through all the different bow grips with German bow to see what's best for this person, what fits best to this particular student.
So, I mean, that kind of brings us round to your teaching, and I was watching a fantastic interview that you did with Joel Quarrington for the ISB Centre Stage program, which is just superb. So all of the members of the ISB are able to watch this interview. And in it, Joel says that he toured around the European bass schools a few years ago and visited your class in Dusseldorf, and your class had everyone beat. And that was his words. And I just think it's such a wonderful statement that somebody like Joel Quarrington is, visiting all these wonderful institutions. And so you're obviously getting something right. And, you've created this wonderful energy. What do you think's happening in your class that's getting those results? What are the kind of, the messages that you're feeding them that are getting you're getting this out of them?
I think one of and I think I was writing you before that I'm a bit allergic to videos of people instructing how to play.
Yeah.
Again, it's very personal, and I find that what I say, again, might not work for you or someone else, and it's very personal. So if I'm teaching online I'm very allergic for it, making a video like that. I'm completely aware that it can, inspire someone, and so then again, I think teaching is not about giving the answers. Teaching is about asking the right questions and make the student think for itself, because that's a dangerous thing. You say, no, it has to be like this, or you should play like this, or it should sound like this. I find that, for me, a good student is the one, or I feel good if I taught that person to be its own best teacher, to ask the right questions, to solve the right things, instead of chewing everything for her or him and trying to give all the answers, which is a very interesting process. I mean, creating a class like this is not from one day to another day. It's a lot of energy. Yeah, I mean, when I began, it was a very small class, and of course, you start to have students that win jobs, big jobs. So then word is spreading, and I think also what is nice is what I told you before. We are like a little family. We have a great classroom with a big couch and a fridge and a coffee machine, and it's a real place where you can easily feel at home. But again, I want the student to have those 4 years, maybe 2 if it's only master, to be something that he explores himself or herself, everything possible, instead of me giving the answers of how it should be.
I was told once that you have this thing which I've subsequently learned maybe isn't quite right, called the 10 Commandments of Bass. And somebody emailed me and said, you must get Rick Stotijn to talk about 10 Commandments of Bass. I was like, I don't know what this is, but it sounds amazing. But like, I believe that there isn't even 10. Could you maybe like shed a bit of light on what he was meaning?
When I did an Erasmus study in Lyon, which is one of the nicest times I had. I was then with Bernard Cazerin, a fantastic person and a really great teacher. And there was this, on the wall there was a paper with 25 orchestral excerpts. And I was like, oh, it looks nice. And then he was telling me, yeah, well, everyone needs to know them by heart, basically. And kind of copied that, but with less. So, there's a list of where I think that, bass players should know them inside out. I should call you, wake you up, and then boom, you play it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So can you shout out a few of them? Is it Heldenleben?
Heldenleben, Don Juan, the three big Beethoven, 359, Mozart, 40, Hafner, Schubert, Unfinished, Verdi, Otello, as you mentioned before, Heldenleben, Don Juan, Bruckner 7, Mahler 2, Mendelssohn 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work right there.
Yeah, but at the same time, and that's part of another program that I try to start, especially when students start with me. I use a 5-point program. 5 is somehow a very good number. All the big symphonies, most famous one are the 5th Symphony, Beethoven 5, Mahler 5, Bruckner 5, amazing, Shostakovich 5, you name it. And it's kind of a climax. The first point of that 5-step plan is orchestral excerpts / technique. The second one is a movement of a concerto. The third one is a solo piece for double bass, so without piano whatsoever, just a solo piece. The fourth one is a piece with piano. And the fifth one is a movement of a sonata. So you have a movement of a concerto, a movement of sonata, a solo piece, a piece for piano and bass, and then of course the orchestral excerpts. And every week then you extract 3 extra orchestral parts in order to have that range of hopefully 20 orchestral pieces that you can play almost by heart, and that increases the program a lot. And we're now and also watching your channel. There's so many amazing bass players, and I'm amazed by the level.
It's a golden age, I think.
It's incredible. So the pieces that are now there, we're not relying on Dusseldorf, Van Hal, Kuzowiecki, Bottesini anymore. That's something now as well for students. I think it's great to explore what else is there. So that program of 5 points is actually also helping to go through a lot of repertoire, new repertoire, but also to prepare for a master studies. So for me in a master study, you should look at the concertos that we're not so often looking at. So Skalkotas, Rautovara, of course Tubin, Dubignon concerto, the Français concerto, pieces that we don't often play. So yeah, having this program really helps to expand your repertoire, to repeat a certain stuff and touch everything.
Are your students bringing music in that you're not familiar with? Are the pieces that you've discovered that you've been, maybe solo pieces or modern works? I mean, is it maybe you could speak about a few of those that you think that you've been excited to hear and to bring in?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the duty for us to get in touch with composers and ask them to write new work for us. I mean, some of them are maybe not the best, but we have to try and we have to go for it, and we have to explore that. So I did a Dutch double bass disc with new works, a Swedish one, which is the most recent one, and then there will be a French one. The next one is an Italian one. The nicest thing is if a student comes and he listened to a recording and he's like, I want to play this piece, which they never heard before, or which is that's of course great, and it helps me of course as well to work on those pieces with them.
you know, as a teacher, you're just, you know, all this music coming in
Yeah.
towards you. It's yeah, an incredible experience.
But then again, it is recordings are great, and it's so good to inspire. It's and same with videos. And this might be something of the new generation, is that, you know, the screen, the phone, you know, something to check is so important. And I think to really explore and to go into the deep, we need to forget all of that. And we need to indeed
find your
and to, again, repeat myself, sort of look for the answers yourself. But I had a student in the beginning, and I gave a new piece, and she was saying, I don't want to play this. I said, why not? You have to play it. It's really good. Yeah, but I couldn't find the recording on YouTube or Spotify. And then you really hit the wrong button with me. Yeah. Again, it's so good to have an inspiration, to have an idea, but the music starts with the player itself. So for that, it's good to avoid everything what has been done and to start with it completely by yourself.
So moving across to the orchestral world, your role as a principal bass player, I'm sure that you have, well, one, taken many auditions, but also been a judge on many of the panels. What are the kind of, what are maybe some of the themes that you see with people who are really successful and present a great audition?
I think, everyone knows that if, in order to pass those pre-rounds, if you, first of all, of course, intonation, important, rhythm, and then phrasing, etc. But if those, musical projection as well, of course, as sound as well, if those are all right, you have a big chance that you will pass to the next rounds. If you practice on those, rhythm, intonation, phrasing, dynamic differences, understanding of the music, and actually do make a Mozart sound like Mozart and a Heldenleben like Heldenleben, right and left hand, then you show in a audition that you understood the music.
You think you can hear those different bowings coming through, you know, that a Mozart stroke is, you know, different from, you know, what you may use in Bach or Brahms, or, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It all starts with the bow. It all starts with our lungs, and the great thing is that if it's a challenge, and I try to teach it my students, although I really can't still do it myself, but actually to learn the alphabet in your bow, like a singer, to be able to pronounce certain vowels, certain letters. And one of the nicest things to do that is, for instance, playing Schubert songs, because you have the lyrics, and okay, now I want to have a ka, or I want to have a oo, or ah. How can you pronounce that with the bow? Then the bow becomes not like a down or up bow; it becomes some kind of a wizard's stick, where you can introduce all the different shapes. And I think, for me personally, that's the secret also, that you can understand orchestral parts much better. Okay, now I play Mozart. Okay, I have an app in my right hand, so it's like I play Mozart at this shape. Oh, now I play Heldenleben. Okay, this shape, more weight of my arm, slower bow, etc., etc. That for every orchestral part or piece you play, you create those shapes in your bow.
It's fantastic. And so moving on to the more advanced side of things, as a principal bass player leading a section, I just wonder if you have some thoughts on what makes a good principal bass player. You know, perhaps principal bass players that you've met and worked with alongside over the years that have really kind of inspired you. It's difficult to say, but for me, if a principal is breathing, that you can feel he's breathing along with the group. It's really
it's funny how sometimes if I work with students or go masterclass somewhere, how many bassist players actually have difficulties with playing pizzicato. A fantastic virtuoso playing, but then there comes a pizzicato and it's like there's no sound. It's like dry.
There's no resonance.
Nothing, and it's like suddenly, and that's actually maybe it's 70% what we do in the orchestra. So we better make sure that our pizzicato sound really good. Like with the bow, you know, there's so many different shapes and speeds of the pizzicati that we can give. And for me personally, you know, if we play a Mahler pizzicato, for instance, in Adagietto from Mahler, and it's all together, then this one pitch that you all breathe together and everyone breathes with you. I think that's one of the most happy moments ever. But that moment that you can breathe all along and the power of that bass pizzicato coming, and then it's like, poof, it's the best thing ever. Yeah. That's why I play bass probably.
So just moving on to a topic that everybody is interested in, Rick, before we wrap things up, I wonder if you could share a little bit about your basses. I was checking out the video with Joel Covington and you can see 8 of them in the background. So give us a bit of a rundown about your favourite instruments and what you're playing on at the moment, because I believe there's some fine double basses in there.
Yeah, I've been quite lucky. And yeah, as a bass geek, I'm always looking for, something special. Like, oh, just an amazing A string, or this has such rich overtone, high register. The favorite, the one I played of my solo with is actually, it's a composite. It's made out of different parts, but the front, the scroll, some ribs are old. It said Panorama School, who knows? And then the back is new and some ribs as well. But that one never lets me down. It's incredible.
So is that your solo bass?
Yeah.
Is that the one that?
Yeah.
And is that always in solo?
It's quite
tune?
big actually. It's a real proper 107.5.
Really?
Big shoulders, everything. But the sound is amazing.
And so you have that in solo tuning all the time?
Yeah, also high C tuning.
Yeah.
And then I have a very small Italian bass. Maybe it's Cerruti. It's a gorgeous bass, and that one also works very well in high C tuning.
Oh, nice.
John Frederick Lott, the first.
Beautiful English maker.
Yeah. A very big. The one I used to play that one in Berlin when I was principal there in the Rundfunk Symphony Orchestra, the radio orchestra. It's a humongous 5-string. It's the biggest you've probably ever seen it. It used to be 114.5. And now it's reduced to 111. It's Anton Riga. It's a Mittenwald bass.
So the string length is 100.
Yeah.
Wow, that's.
But it's literally you play on the bottom and things are moving.
Yeah, the building's moving.
There's a bass section inside. So and to play that in Berlin, it was great.
Do you have extensions on all your basses?
Most of them. Yeah, I have a bass from my friend Harry Janssen, a new bass with extension. Scaramelli bass with Sergio Scaramelli with extension.
Which one's the cornerless one? Because there's a great recording of you playing the Led Zeppelin Since I've Been Loving You, and I noticed you had this beautiful cornerless.
That's the Scaramelli
bass.
Is
it?
Yeah.
Cool.
Which is a copy of a Landolfi, and the back is made out of a old church table.
Really?
Yeah.
And how do you find? How does that kind of? What's your experience with a cornerless instrument?
You get used to it, but
you can't never pick it up.
No, well, you can grab it by the bridge or even by the F-holes, but it's you get used to it.
Yeah.
The thing is, apparently they say it's made for to play in the streets because it's supposed to be louder
really?
Without the corners. Yeah, that's
wow.
If it's true, I don't know, but it's supposed to produce a little bit better.
Any other notable ones before I move on?
I used to play Raffaello Antonio Gagliano. I was from the Dutch Instrument Foundation, Piedmont, French, beautiful violona, G violona, very old. I think that's about it.
Yeah. Is there any new ones on the horizon? Anything that you've got your eye on?
Yeah, there will be a new bass from Benjamin Grieshaber in Cologne. He's a very talented violin maker, and he already made a new bass for the Hochschule in Dusseldorf, and he's making a copy of the lot, but just with the shoulders being cut a little bit more.
Yeah.
So it's also a solo very comfortable.
Okay, so I believe that you're a Piastro artist?
Yes.
So which sets are you using on your basses? What you go to?
I have a Doxa orchestral strings on the lot, which is it's just insane. The bottom, I never heard anything like that.
And that's wrapped gut, isn't it? That's a really
silver.
yeah.
On my on the Panorama score, on my solo bass, I have Flexocore Deluxe.
And that's the bass that you're sat with at the moment is my instrument.
Yes.
And I put the Flexocore Deluxe on, and they sound great. They really like pop
yeah,
out.
I used to always play flat chrome steel. I still like them a lot, but they tend to be a little bit sharp, but you don't hear that in the whole, and they really produce a lot of sound. But I find this string is kind of in the middle. It still has a lot of overtone richness, but is very, projecting very well.
Yeah. Well, Piastro makes some amazing strings. And tell me about your bow as well. What are you using today?
This is
beautiful.
This is funny. This is an Albrecht, Milan Albrecht.
Yeah. He makes the bows for, the family make the bow for Bozo, I believe. Yeah.
So my first week in Freiburg, Bozo came with this box of 6 bows. And I got this, I couldn't even hardly play German bow, but it felt immediately right. And I've got a very nice old pencil bow and a Fretschner, but this, it's still my favorite.
Yeah. They're fantastic. I've definitely been on my list. A couple of the small things. What kind of rosin are you using? I know people
Pops.
want to know that. Pops. Yeah, easy. That's it. And just to wrap up, we're going to cut to hear you perform on my instrument in this wonderful hall that we're in. But lastly, why don't you tell us about the upcoming projects? What recordings you have coming out? What are you working on right now? And where can people go to hear you play?
So what's upcoming now is a release of a Italian CD, Doppio Espressivo, and it's all double concertos from Vivaldi and Bottesini, and beautiful Vivaldi aria as well, and also the Adagio Melancolico, the Ernst. Have
you recorded this already?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that was done last year with the Concertgebouw Camerata, and we did it in October last year. It's coming out November, and then we do a little tour as well with concerts, and then next recording is coming up October. It's French music, so the Français bass concerto, the Lancin bass concerto, and Richard Dubignon, the concerto. It's a concerto written for high C, very nice piece.
Wow.
It's and after that we will have again a chamber music recording, and we go to a very nice American disc with composers that actually went to the States from Europe and had a humongous influence on the scene there, like Hindemith, of course, Kusevitsky.
And to keep track of what you're doing, make sure that people go and visit rickstotijn.com.
Yep.
I believe I'll put the link below, because in case anyone's struggling with the spelling like I am, I'll put the link below so people can go and find out more about you. So thanks so much for joining me today, Rick, and we're going to cut and listen to you perform on my double bass. So thanks again.
Yeah, cheers.